Welcome on into the MO podcast. This is me,
Confirmation,
and I'm here with
Atreya,
and today we are going to talk about
the Nazis and their obsession with the occult.
which was vast. Okie dokie, so it's not really going to be a chronological thing, it's just going to be just going off how mad they were. So if we start with, I'll start with the world ice theory, which is called Weltsischel. I'm not going to do it. I can't do German. I got a U in German at school. I'm not going to start.
I didn't even do German, so.
Yeah. So the world ice theory. This was a theory which was created by Hans Horbiger, who was a successful engineer and inventor. In fact, the engineering company that still bears his name runs today. They make pistons, I think. But anyway, basically in 1894, while looking at the moon and the brightness and roughness of the moon's surface, he thought that was caused by ice. Later on, he had a dream that he was floating in space, watching a pendulum swing, growing longer and longer until it broke. And it was then, I quote, "I knew that Newton had been wrong." This is kind of the guy that we're dealing with here. This was supposed to take over in the Nazi regime as their religion. It was supposed to push Christianity off its pedestal because Christianity had been invented by the horrible, evil Jews. I said that in quote marks. I don't believe that. I just need to make that clear. That's what the Nazis are saying. Oh, crap. Dicey subject. So basically, because Christianity had been invented by Jews, it was kind of like they wanted everything to keep away from them, and basically this was promoted as the German equivalent of the theory of relativity, because Einstein had created that, and that's bad because he's a Jew. So this is what they thought. So basically, he had this dream that he was floating in space, watching a pendulum growing longer and longer until it broke, and he went, "That's something I want to be a part of." So to work out this theory of relativity, this science, this cosmology, this whatever you want to call it, he worked with a fella called Philip Farm, who was a school teacher and an amateur astronomer. Farm had a considerable following in the astrology community, and he'd previously produced a large
Yet inaccurate,
a large but wrong lunar map. So these two fellas have got great credentials for coming up with this. So basically, what the concept of it is that ice is a basic element within the universe, which it kind of is because it's hard water. So what had happened before the Big Bang, or just after the Big Bang, a waterlogged dead star had fell into a gigantic star, exploded through all this water out into the universe. There it froze, becoming planets, moons, and other satellites. The planets on the outer rim of the solar system, so Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, they were so much bigger than Earth because they'd absorbed all this ice. Yeah. Basically, and every now and then, one of these satellites or moons falls into Earth, which causes a geological shift and is one of the causes for hailstorms.
Where did he get this from?
I mean, dreaming and having visions. I mean, I don't know. I think opium was legal back then as well, so I mean that could have something to say to it. But yeah,
I'd say so. Jeez.
Yeah. So
Plucked this out of thin air, hasn't he?
literally, and if his credentials weren't bad enough, the guy that he's got helping him tried to draw a map of space and got it wrong, but yet they're still believing in him. So the Earth, many years ago, had more than one moon. So the reason that, say, we've got big geological shifts is because the other moons fell into the Earth, causing these geological shifts, and these were made of ice, even though that's not how a moon works with orbit. But he he believed it was responsible for the biblical flood, one of these moons. So he's now mixing science and religion together, just to try and cover all his bases. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons as well is why this kind of fit in with the thinking at the time is because, and I quote, "Our Nordic ancestors grew strong in snow and ice. Belief in the cosmic ice is consequentially the natural heritage of Nordic man."
Right.
That's where they were going from.
Okay.
Because to try and fit in with the narrative of Nordic man strong, Aryan man strong, this they lived in snow and ice, so therefore snow and ice is it must run the universe.
Got ya. I love how they've worked this out really well with their like PR marketing campaign.
Exactly. It's just, I mean, I don't know. You do your research, but what I do is at the beginning of the week, I like look at some stuff, have a read of it, write a few notes down, and then later on in the week, I go back to it and type it out, just so I've kind of done it twice.
Yeah.
And literally with this, when I was typing it out, you know, when you just get to a point and you go, oh, no, like you don't want to type it out anymore because you're just like, how are these words even on a page?
Yeah.
This almost killed me. But Harbinger, he when he was challenged about facts, he always had a great comeback, a great one-liner. So basically, when people told him, well, the maths don't add up, he said, calculation can only lead you astray.
Oh, okay. Legit.
Yeah, so that's a great scientific argument there.
Wow.
There was photographic evidence that this hasn't actually happened. It was faked by reactionary astronomers. I mean, I'm not big in the astronomy community, but reactionary astronomers as opposed to is this a big thing going on there?
Your guess is as good as mine.
And then the best one, an expert on rockets called Willie Lay, he actually said, well, to be honest with you, the moon's surface reaches over 100 degrees in the daytime. I don't know how, because the moon's not out in the day. But
excuse me.
we'll go with that. So basically, when the moon when it's facing the sun, temperatures can reach 100 degrees. Therefore, ice can't be on the surface because it'll just melt. Mm-hmm. And he said, Harbinger turned around and said, well, either you believe in me and learn, or you will be treated as the enemy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he was taking, like, this was before the Nazi Party was created, by the way, so I think he was one of the front runners of going, like, you know, you've got to listen to us or you're going the other way.
Yeah. Threw his dummy out of the pram, it sounds.
Indeed. He didn't like being told he was wrong.
Massively.
He was a lot.
He was massively wrong.
Yeah. He also had. So basically, what he tried to do, rather than go down the academic route and have your peers look at it and have university professors, people in the field look at it, because he was so off his noggin, he took it to the masses. So basically, he was the kind of person that you see in any town centre on a banana box shouting the world is nigh kind of thing. So his thought process was taking it to the masses. They'll believe it because academics are too clever to believe in this.
Yeah.
He was right. And he had pamphlets, leaflets, posters, books, even a newspaper propagating this. Some of his followers attended astronomical meetings, heckled the speakers, and were chanting, out with astronomical orthodoxy, give us Harbinger.
Wow.
So, yeah, he was... So this basically is what Hitler actually adopted this as the official cosmology of the Nazi Party. So it has been signed in. Member of the Nazi Party. I mean, I don't think you had to believe it or whatever, but it was something that was officially connected to the Nazi Party. Houston Stuart Chamberlain, who was the he was like the brains behind the Nazi Party. He was a philosopher. Oh, I can't say the bloody word. He was a thinker of the time, and he had, I think, he had a relationship with Hitler, and he was very. He had a lot of influence over Hitler and a lot of influence over how the Nazi Party came into being, and he was well on board with this. He believed everything. This is what they were doing back then.
Massive marketing campaign.
Exactly, that's it. And the thing is with this as well, it's kind of come home a little bit to me, because it's like when with the quotes of saying it was faked and he's trying to go to the masses. It's kind of what you can see in politics that's happening now with like social media. And I'd love to think that back then they didn't have the internet, they didn't have sources that you could easily get hold of. You know, there's no Google search. It was go to a library or just believe people. Mm-hmm. I'd love to believe that's why it was so easy for them to get this out there. But looking at it today, it's kind of history repeating. Yeah,
definitely.
So that's the world ice theory. I mean, as soon as the Nazi Party fell, it kind of disappeared from the record books. Really, nobody else was believing in it. It I could only find that it was popular around this period of time. It had a little resurgence in the 50s, but only as far as soon as it came out, it got debunked straight away, and they went, no, it doesn't. No, it don't work like that. Excuse me. But yeah, so that was the world ice theory, which they had back then. Also, I mean, as well, there was the Thule Society around at this point, which was kind of a secret society, let's say. Well, it wasn't that secret, but it was a society that existed, which was partly occultish and partly Volkish. So this was founded after the Great War, the First World War. Basically, excuse me. Basically, this was just like-minded people meeting up. It was like a Masons club. It was a good boys club, really, basically. But they were predominantly interested in the Volkish, which is basically the kind of the Nordic Aryan roots of how the German people should be. So there was a lot of stuff surrounded by that. There was a lot of Nazi sympathisers and pre-Nazis who were part of this group or who were speakers at this group. Himmler was there. It was, I think Eckhart was there. Dietrich Eckhart, who was a major influence on Hitler. Might talk about him later. He was a major influence on Hitler. He was involved with the society. The society had 250 members in Munich and 1,500 members in Bavaria. So it wasn't so... It was occultish in the way that they would try to propagate the myth of the Aryan race. So it wasn't like, I don't know, but I don't think they were there doing Ouija boards and stuff like that, or having tarot readings, etc. But they were interested in the folklore, because that's all it is, of the Aryan race. And one of the things was the new members of it had to sign a form which said, "The signer hereby swears to the best of his knowledge and belief that no Jewish or coloured blood flows in either his or his wife's veins, and
Wow.
among their ancestors are no members of the coloured races."
How would they know that for definite? I mean, you go on Ancestry.com and you find out that you've got like a, Brazilian great half aunt sister, and you're like, oh, cool, I've got a bit Brazilian in me, or whatever, or cool, I had somebody related to me from Zimbabwe. Like, you don't know that just offhand. Like, even if I asked my parents, like, hey, what was our heritage, they would go, north of England, and that's as much as I care.
That's it. That's exactly it. I mean, it's the same. It's kind of like. I mean, I think they completely forgot that. To be honest with you, first man came out of Africa, so in a way, we all do have ancestry with quotation marks coloured blood in it. I think they kind of decided to forget about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, how would you know? Going back, how would you go back in them days?
You couldn't, could you?
Yeah, that's it. So you could just, honest.
So they were never really going to get pure blood, really, were they?
No. As well, they did. They tried, but no, they were just. So this was kind of the precursor. It was sponsored by the DAP, which was what the Nazi Party was before it became the Nazi Party. So it was a big influence on the thinking of the time of them particular leaders. And like I say, Dietrich Eckart, he was part of that, and he was Hitler's mentor. They were both in They were both Austrian, but they'd moved to Munich and they met around the same time. And Eckart he was of the belief, no, it gets wild. He was of the belief that there would be a German Messiah. And when he met Hitler, he linked onto him straight away, and he was this is the man for the job kind of thing.
It was the Tash.
Yeah, and
the Tash of power.
Exactly. It's weird though. I don't know why I'm saying this is weird in it when we're talking about this, but in the First World War, Hitler had one of them long tashes that curled up at the end.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he didn't just have the little Charlie Chaplin one. It was proper waxed and everything in pictures when you see him in the First World War.
He should have kept it.
I know, God, yeah. And then people would feel bad about wearing them nowadays.
We could have been rid of them once and for all.
Exactly. God damn it. Can't do anything right, Hitler. Yeah, so Eckart was a major proponent of the kind of Germanic Messiah, and we need one man to lead us into the future. And he was a major person. Well, not a major. He was big in the society and kind of propagated this myth that Hitler would be the man. And he actually said, I think it was him. Yeah, he actually said that in the next coming, quote marks, there will be, the Third Reich will last for 1,000 years. And he said that in the 20s, late 20s, 1920s, and then in an interview just before the war, Hitler used the same quotation, there will be a Third Reich that will last for 1,000 years. So he was up his own.
Boy, don't you hate it when you're wrong.
Yeah, I know. Jesus Christ. But yeah. So there was that, and that was bobbing around at the time. But again, it's more the Aryan side of it, and we are the best. Again, they were all wrong. But so yeah, and as well, Himmler was part of this group, and Karl Maria Willigut was Himmler's mentor, and this lad was mad as a bag of frogs. He was literally mad. He was sectioned due to abusive and eccentric behaviour. But he fought in the First World War. He retired as a colonel in 1919, and then he decided to study the occult. This is where this goes downhill for this poor lad. Well, not poor lad, he was a Nazi scumbag.
Do you think maybe he had PTSD from the First World War as well? Maybe that might have sent him a bit over the edge. Probably,
because that was hand-to-hand stuff in trenches and horrible, and you if you were in it, you weren't walking away without being wounded, whether physically or emotionally, psychologically.
Yeah.
But as he's studying the occult, he claims to have lineage to the old Germanic kings / mages of Germanic prehistory. Now, I think the book that you've got described him as a warlock.
Yes.
I don't know if it said his name. I can't remember if it said his name, but this was the guy. So as soon as he found out he was a mage, he started acting a bit odd.
As you do.
Yeah, no surprise there, really was there. But he was abusive as well, so he was a proper piece of work. He was abusive to his wife and his child, and he actually got sectioned due to that. And when they sectioned him, they tested him, and he had narcissistic personality disorder and schizophrenia.
No way, really?
Yeah.
Never would have guessed.
Yeah. So he was ill. But after he got let out in 1932, he emigrated to Munich. And he met Himmler at a Volkisch conference. So they started chatting, and within 2 years, he'd been promoted to the equivalent of a 1-star general in the SS, and was a part of Himmler's personal staff. He actually headed up a department of pre- and early history in this, which then sent him looking all around. Well, sent him looking into the Holy Grail, to magic, to witchcraft, etc., etc. So he was part of the faith of the Wodan, the old Saxon belief system. Again, trying to get away from Christianity, which is what they all kind of did, even though Hitler himself never actually recanted his Catholicism. He was still a Catholic when he died, but he was on an outgoing front. He didn't want to be part of a quotation marks Jewish-based religion, and yeah, he was he was a right piece of work. So what he basically, according to him, Germanic culture and history reached back to 228,000 BC. So at this time, when all this was going on, he proposed there were 3 suns in the sky. The earth was inhabited by giants, dwarfs, and other mythical creatures. So maybe it's that illness coming out there.
Or he was BFFs with Tolkien.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
PR.
Yeah, he also had Ice Kings in there.
Oh right.
Yeah, it's so it's basically what it is there was an Aeminic religion of Christ in 500 BC. So this is like just after man has started using tools and stuff. They started following the religion of Christ. So it's Christ spelt with a K.
Right, okay.
Yeah, he had to think hard for that, didn't he? And then basically that became the religion of all the Germanic people, and which in turn was taken over by the Wotanists in AD 460. So then they turned it into the Thor, Odin mythological belief. So he's, I mean, to be honest with you, I think he's reaching there.
Yeah.
But bless him, he tried. And this was the person that Himmler had on his personal staff. This is the person who came up with the idea of the Wellsberg Castle and all the myths around that area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he was
planting the seed.
Exactly, that's it. I mean, Himmler was out there anyway. He didn't need that much of a push, did he, to go any further? But as soon as he met this guy, he was like, yes. But then Carl Maria Willigut was retired in 1938, so just before the war was started. His actual official retirement date was a day after the war had started, but it actually happened in February of that year when they found out that he had been in a mental institute. So they didn't want that to taint anyone's thoughts of Himmler. Mm-hmm. Even though they'd already built Wellsberg Castle by then, and they were already had the going around the world looking for all these things.
Yes.
Well, at least they didn't do any harm, huh? So
tell that to the people surrounding Wavelsberg Castle.
Yeah.
When they were all booted out so that he could make the castle a bit bigger, which never happened. But he did have grand plans.
Yeah.
To make a little Camelot.
It's just so. What was going on in Himmler's head?
I think he was just. I feel like he kind of forgot about Hitler. Like, maybe it's, I think, when his PA messaged him, like, oh, by the way, you've got an appointment with Mr. Hitler. And he was like, oh, yeah, I forgot he's my boss. But mostly he just kind of got on with stuff by himself. And I kind of think he fancied himself as a bit of a god. Like, he kind of forgot that this was Hitler's master plan, and he was a bit like, he wanted this castle and this Camelot, and he wanted to be King Arthur. He recruited 12 officers that were his Knights of the Round Table. Apparently he even had a round table installed at the castle. And then he booted all the people out around the village so he could make it bigger. And he did think he was the reincarnation of Heinrich I, the first official German king. And he had all these fantastical ideas that I'm not quite sure why nobody originally had said. Maybe it's probably because he was terrifying. But I don't know why anybody had said, you are nuts. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, they all kind of went along with it. Even that, like, I don't think all of them were like, yeah, this is the occult, that is where it's at. But it served their purpose. But you're looking at Himmler, and didn't anyone say to Hitler, like, he's building this massive castle out there? Have you seen what he's up to?
He was just left to his own devices mostly, wasn't he? Really?
That's it. He didn't even need to run the SS, to be honest with you, because if you just get a load of racists and give them guns, they know what they need to do.
They run themselves, yeah.
Exactly. In their own head, they know where they need to go, who they need to bring back. So it doesn't need to have any oversight. And so what if they get it wrong once in a while? What does it matter? You know what I mean? They're horrible, horrible people.
And I don't think it was too hard to be impressionable on the minds of the young then either, because at that time religion was kind of taking a back seat. People were moving more with modern sort of thinking. Like, it wasn't just the Nazis that were into the occult. It was like the mindset of the younger generation. It was very Victorianized, when everybody was into Ouija boards and post-mortem photography. It was quite acceptable, the occult and mysticism and stuff, to the younger generation. So I think they were impressionable. So they probably were quite easy to manipulate into thinking, that the Jewish people were the enemy and this is right and that's wrong. And I think they probably were quite easy to mould into the SS,
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, just how all this started, to be honest with you, you can see how they got into power. And it's crazy the amount of votes. I think they got under 1 million votes in 1924, and then in 1936 they got 13 million votes. The Nazi Party. That in that short space of time, that is a massive jump. But saying that, in the First World War, the Austro-Hungarian German Empire, as it was massive. It was Germany all the way down to Italy, and then all the way across to the Ukraine and Russia. It was a massive piece of land, and because of the Treaty of Versailles after the First World War, they kind of lost everything. They had to give everything back because they'd taken it that weren't theirs, kind of thing.
Yeah.
There was the Great Depression in 1928, where there was no money, everything was horrible. So you've got this dishevelled not even a workforce, because they got their asses handed to them in First World War. I mean, every country did, but they had massive losses. Mm-hmm. So you can see where this kind of, they just needed to grab on to something and just kind of believe that this could be the truth. Now we can get it all back. We can be the greatness we once were under Charlemagne, under Frederick. We can kind of be them people again. And the easiest way to do that is find an enemy, the Jews, pick on them, say these are the ones that are doing that, create that kind of horrible mentality that it's them against us. And that's half the battle then. Yeah. Like, policies, I don't really think they were really bothered about whether, like, school was doing the 3 R's or anything like that. I don't really think them policies came into effect. I think it was just to try and get the economy back and try and make them a world leader once again.
Yeah, definitely.
But they were horrible. Anyway.
Understatement.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that as well, they did use propaganda, obviously, and they enlisted Nostradamus in this, which is bizarre. It's not bizarre, but
he didn't get that much right, did he?
No, not really. If you look at going back through all of everything he said, I think he's got less than a 1 in 10 chance of getting anything right, this lad. But so Magda Goebbels was reading Nostradamus, as you do, and she went, "Oh, I've forgotten what he's called. What's his first name? Oh, husband, let's say." And she said, "I've been reading this book. It's really good. It's about this mad lad from back in the day, and he can predict stuff." So Goebbels straight away went, "It don't matter what he said. We'll say he said this." And they started putting it out that Nostradamus predicted that France would be defeated. There was going to be a great crisis in Poland and in Britain in 1938. A clairvoyant called Carl Ernest Kraft was enlisted to decipher it, and he was looking at it going, I don't believe half of this anyway. But Goebbels just went, "No, we'll just make it fit however we have to." Kraft was excuse me. Kraft was a astrologer, and he was consulted by Himmler and Rudolf Hess. He was also part of Operation Mars, which I will talk about in a little bit. But Kraft was he was a psychic, quotation marks. He was a psychic. He actually predicted the Munich beer hall bomb, which was to an assassination attempt on Hitler. Hitler had already left, unfortunately. So because he predicted that, even though his job title is psychic, he was arrested because they thought he couldn't predict it. He was part of the plan, and he managed to talk him around and say, "No, I'm an astrologer. I can forecast the event, and then they started using him for quite a few shenanigans. But the interesting thing is during this time, even before the Second World War, it was illegal for clairvoyants and tarot card readers, these kind of people, to charge for their services. So they were kind of really outlawed.
Kind of pointless doing it, don't you think?
Yeah, exactly.
Just get a job in a shop instead.
Yeah, so they were kind of a little like underground secret society. Yet Himmler, Rudolf Hess, the deputy leader of the fucking Nazi party, and Hitler all used him. I mean, it's like, right, okay, do as I say, not do as I do then. Is that what it is?
Sounds it.
Yeah. So again, they with the Nostradamus, they used the 1,000 years empire kind of rhetoric. They kind of crowbarred that in, and France would be defeated in a matter of days, it was said, and everything. But then the Allies decided to fight fire with fire and started airdropping leaflets over Germany saying Nostradamus predicted that Germany would be defeated, thank you very much. Which, and to put the icing on the cake, MGM, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, actually made an American film that was called Nostradamus Says So. And it was about Nostradamus predicting the Allied victory.
Do you think anybody kind of just went, hang on a minute, I don't think this Nostradamus was right about anything. He keeps changing his mind. Does he really know what was going on? I think he's full of shit.
I think he's just... he was... I mean, he'd clearly been out in a field with some mushrooms and then decided to write down his thoughts, didn't he? He was...
Yes. Back when it washed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
nowadays, he'd just go home.
He'd get chased out of town, wouldn't he? Really, but then people were more susceptible to it. So Operation Mars, which I actually do want to talk about because it is quite interesting, because this is one of the things that they kind of got right. So there was actually Action Hess. I'll talk about Action Hess first because that is an amusing little sidebar. So basically, Rudolf Hess was the deputy leader of the Nazi party, and because he was getting more sidelined during the war, and maybe because he was scared, don't know, he decided to fly to Scotland to try and conduct a peace mission. Told no one about it in the Nazi party. Only his nearest and dearest knew that he was actually doing this. He was a World War I fighter pilot, so he could fly a plane. He was actually, for a period, in charge of the Luftwaffe. But basically, once he found out he was getting sidelined and he was getting a bit fed up, he decided to go on holiday to Scotland. Never actually made it. Crashed into the sea, I believe, and was quickly arrested, and stayed most of the war in jail, and was kept in Spandau prison after the war. But the repercussions of this, Hitler decided, as soon as he found out, he was livid. I mean, seething isn't even a word.
Well, yeah, this dude just woke up one day and went, you know what, I think would be a great idea. What about if I flew over to the UK and just went, shall we just all be friends? Shall we put all this behind us?
That's it as well. And I mean, I can imagine Hitler, like, calling his secretary going, yeah, can I get a meeting with Rudolf Hess, please? He's done what?
Definitely.
Yeah, so basically the repercussions of this was Action Hess. So because Hess was crazy for his astrologers, he had his charts done, he was born on the cusp of Aries, I don't know, but he was mad into his crystals and everything. So basically, because he'd done this one thing, all practicing clairvoyants, astrologers and tarot readers, basically all the occult people, they were rounded up and imprisoned.
You Ruined it for everyone.
Exactly. It's my ball. I'm taking it home.
Selfish.
Exactly. I mean, what a dick.
Definitely.
So the thought process in this was it was the astrologers who had done him wrong. The stars weren't wrong. They deciphered it wrong. They made that perfectly clear. Most were released after a couple of days or a few weeks, but they were basically looking for the main people around him who knew he was going to do this and who didn't basically grass him up. But once they were released, they had to sign a declaration that they would stop practicing all their stuff.
How can you promise that if you're psychic?
Exactly. The thing is, maybe they kind of knew, because in 1942, so basically a year after this happened, the Nazis recruited a load of astrologers and dowsers and people who use pendulums and stuff like that in an operation undertaking to find Mussolini. So they kind of broke their own promise there. In fairness, a few of these people were still in prison, and they were released into the care of the army. There was who was it? There was a gentleman, Captain Hans Roeder, who he believed the English were using pendulums to try and find where German flotillas were. Pendulums and dowsing, which is just... Yeah, of course, it's not just your hand, it is the actual pendulum, yeah, of course. So they wanted to... So this gave them the idea of trying to find Mussolini when he was ousted and put into prison, basically, by the... I don't know if it was by the Italian resistance or if it was by the Allies. I don't know. But basically what happened was they used over, I think it was 40 dowsers and pendulum users. Yeah, 40 soothsayers, fortune tellers, astrologers, in an effort to find a location in which he was being held, Mussolini was being held in. They actually found him and broke him out and managed to extract him back into Germany. Now, I'm not calling BS on this, but basically when they went in, so the way they had to go in, because it was at Gran Sasso on top of a mountain, so it was a skiing resort. They had him in a hotel, and there was only one way up, which was a cable car. So basically they had gliders glide in onto the resort, take over the hotel, and then they had a plane take off and extract him out of there. Now, he was heavily guarded, obviously, Mussolini, innit? He was heavily guarded, but not a shot was fired during this operation. So, and what actually happened, who came along on the mission was a high-ranking Italian army officer who was still affiliated with Mussolini, and I think he was the general of the North African Italian army. But basically, he contacted the Italian troops on the ground and said, by the way, we're going to come in, so don't shoot us. And that's the reason why there was no shots fired. It wasn't because it was a daring do if they came in under the cover of darkness and all this. It's because they were told, they were warned not to fire on anyone.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so, I mean, because he was part of that operation and not a shot was fired, I think maybe one of the soldiers on the Italian side went, guess what? Guess who's up in that hotel? And the kind of word of mouth got out rather than someone with a pendulum over a map of the whole of Italy going, yeah, he's in that one hotel.
Or a dowser, hoping that Mussolini was just really hydrated at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll find the bastard. Keep him topped up.
Oh, you better drunk 2 litres today. God damn. Yeah, so, I mean, what have you found out about?
So the things that I found out mostly are not necessarily about the people, it's about objects surrounding them. I did really find this one story really interesting. And so it goes like this. So most of the town halls or like council offices kind of deal were called rat houses. And when the Nazis took over the town of Cell, they took over the rat house, and they basically made it like their headquarters in the town. And you know, there was whispers that there was some weird goings on, like satanic rituals, that kind of thing. And then when the Allies came in and they liberated the town, they found the Germans flooding the rat house, the lower levels of the rat house, which was kind of suspicious. But, you know, they kind of loved their treasure. They were a bit like magpies. So I think the Allies kind of thought, ooh, they've stashed some goodies down there. Let's have at it. So, you know, the Nazis were booted out, and they sent divers down. They sent some divers down into the lower levels to have a look what was down there. Now, 2 of the divers, their lifelines actually snapped and they were never seen again. They never surfaced. And the one that was left, he came back up to the surface, stark raving mad, ranting about pentagrams on walls, that he was chased back up to the surface by a dark figure following him around, that there was mutilated bodies tied to chairs with like animal heads sewn on them, and as he was swimming past them, it looked like they were still alive and they were moving. He went absolutely crazy, understandably. And yeah, so after that, the Allies actually filled the 2 lower levels with concrete, and apparently to this day you can still see the top of the banister and the newel rail, where they just didn't actually have time to saw it off. They just filled it with concrete and left it.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. And the soldiers that were there after, that were stationed thereafter, it was kind of like a training ground sort of deal. They reported footsteps, they saw weird things, chanting, monk kind of figures. So yeah, that was the story that I found, but I couldn't find any evidence to back this up at all. Like, I know that there are people that say yes, the 2 lower levels are concreted, but it's more likely they were concreted because they couldn't stop the floods. How the Germans had flooded it all, there probably was gold or pieces of artwork or whatever down there, and they knocked it straight into the lake bed. So for all we were pumping the water out, it was just filling back up again.
Okay, so it was just constantly filling.
Yeah, so there was nothing they could do really. So I think they just wrote off the bottom 2 layers, filled it with concrete, and just were like, hey, we can still use the rest of the building. I can't find any records of this story. Surfaced in 2018, and every source that I find is from 2018. There's nothing before then, so I suspect maybe it's made up, maybe it's a bit of an urban legend, but still kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Also around Wewelsburg Castle, there's a Bavarian lake nearby, and some divers found this gold cauldron, which they later called the Kimsey Cauldron, and it had like Celtic, Nordic engravings on it. It was solid gold. It was 10.5 kilos of solid gold, and there was this theory that it was this ancient artifact because it was a dead ringer for an actual Celtic artifact that they found that's in a museum that's made of solid silver. It was identical, just it was gold, and they were saying, you know, maybe this had some kind of supernatural power, or maybe they had it made, maybe it was a modern day artifact, they had it made up and they were going to, you know, use it as their kind of holy grail kind of deal. It turned out anyway that it was a modern day artifact. It wasn't ancient. But there was no link, really, that it had anything to do with the castle. It was just found in the lake by the castle. And a few years ago, some documents that had allegedly belonged to Himmler surfaced in somebody's attic. And there was on Nazi letterhead, there was like an inventory list, and one thing on the list said golden cauldron, Celtic golden cauldron. So it looks like Himmler did have it in his stash, but for what use, we don't know. Maybe he was going to use it as his holy grail. I don't know. There's also stories that it was given to him as a gift for like a power thing, like, hey, have this really expensive gold cauldron that I've just made for you, and let's be friends and let me work my way up the metaphorical food chain.
Okay, yeah.
So we're not sure, but it's actually locked away now, and nobody is allowed any access to it. So that's a bit strange. I mean, I guess, it's 10.5 kilos of solid gold. You probably want to keep it under lock and key, but the fact that nobody is allowed anywhere near it is a bit odd. Not even like, the scientists or the historians or anything. Nobody.
Wow, that's weird. So do you think they just like ditched it in the lake as they were running off?
Yeah, I think so. I think because I know that they kind of did this. Well, there's theories, isn't there, that they've hid treasure all over the world. But I know that they were kind of quickly bundling things up when they decided things were going a bit south, and they were stashing them in mines and all sorts of... This story's coming up all over the world where they're like, oh, I found Nazi gold, I found Nazi paintings or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think they were stashing them because they were so convinced that the Fourth Reich would come about and they needed all this stuff. I don't know why they felt like great portraits needed to be part of their Nazi collection. I'm not overly sure, but they did stash everything. So yeah, I think they just kind of chucked it in the lake and hoped nobody would find it. And nobody did, until recently.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's...
Another thing I found which was kind of weird, but again, I can't find any reliable source, is that they were keeping the mummified bodies of Teutonic warriors in abandoned mine shafts.
Say so what?
Yeah. They were keeping these mummified corpses in mine shafts so that they could resurrect them and use them as part of their pure blood breeding program when they figured out how to do that. When the warlocks finally figured out how to resuscitate corpses that had been dead thousands of years.
God, imagine the smell.
I know, right?
I try to mount you. You'd be like, "Whoa, have a breath mint, mate."
I really, really hope my kids get telekinetic powers for this.
Yeah, better be worth it. God
yes,
damn.
Dear God. And there's one more thing that I found that was... These are all just like they're urban legends. I want them to be true, but I can't find any die-hard reliable source. Is quite a common one, and it's Die Glocke, the bell. Anybody that's played Call of Duty or Wolfenstein or even Assassin's Creed will know that was allegedly a time machine that they'd invented that would help them turn the tide of the war and win the war. And it would help them resurrect soldiers and create armies of the undead and all this kind of crap. But strangely, and it might be something that we cover in a different episode, I don't know. But strangely, in 1965, there was a well-known UFO sighting in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. And the people of the town, they said that they saw like a fireball coming down to the earth. And then the next day, loads of people witnessed this bell-shaped or acorn-shaped object being transported by soldiers across a field. Allegedly, there's a video somewhere online. I don't I don't know how reliable that is. So some people are now saying that Die Glocke actually did work and that they sneaked it away and then travelled forward in time to stash it. So they travelled forward to 1965 with the time machine and stashed it away, and it's some kind of Nazi conspiracy now. It's still out there. And other theories is that they hid it away and like either our soldiers or the American soldiers have now found it and they were transporting it to do work on it, or whether it's a bunch of neo-Nazis, I don't know, but people are theorising that it wasn't a UFO that fell to Kecksburg, it was Die Glocke, and it was them travelling forward in time. Which would be so awesome.
Yeah, that's interesting, because in the, like, literally, our Nazi UFOs is one of the bullet points I've got, and that is actually mentioned, the Bell UFO Die Glocke. It was a top secret tech that they were working on, but apparently one of the people that witnessed or was working on this, not Kenneth Arnold, where's his bloody name? Well, there was Professor Giuseppe Belluzzo, the scientist under Mussolini, claimed the Nazis had types of flying discs as early as 1942 as a new kind of aircraft. Bearing in mind that the world hadn't seen V1 and V2 rockets before the Nazis came up with them, I don't think it's that much of a step to be thinking that they may have different aeronautical kind of stuff in the works.
Yeah.
But one of them, so Rudolf Schreiber and Klaus Habermal worked on a ring of moving turbine blades around a fixed cockpit, and it was claimed to climb to 40,000 feet in 3 minutes. Wow. And attain speeds of 1,400 miles an hour in level flight. So, I mean, that did come up in mind, because I just thought, it's funny. And the only reason I actually wrote it down is because the Foo Fighters are mentioned in it.
Yeah.
So the Foo Fighters, which are unusual aerial phenomenon, but that's where it was termed. The Allied troops thought it was the Nazis' UFOs. But yeah, well, that's interesting, because that kind of has come up twice there.
Yes.
That'd be
maybe it was one of their secret aircraft. You know, it seems more plausible that it was an aircraft than it was a time machine, but I would really like for it to be a time machine.
To be honest with you as well, Kenneth Arnold, he did say it was in 1947, but he did say 9 shiny UFOs flying at speeds of in excess of 1,200 miles an hour. And this was over America. I can't for the life of me remember where. But once, when he said this is where all the revelations of the plans that had come up, that the Allies had found that the Nazis had maybe a different technology, and they were looking at a flying disc kind of aircraft. Mm-hmm. And also 1947 was Roswell.
Yes, yeah.
The Roswell incident as well, so...
I think it all ties in, doesn't it? I think they probably were working on some stuff that... Maybe it's a government conspiracy cover-up. Maybe it's our government knows all about these aircraft and they're using them, for our own benefits. Or maybe it's just a bunch of BS. I don't...
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the little people like us are never going to know, are we, really? No. I mean, that's an unfortunate thing, but
there was a lot of people in Kecksburg that saw this, and it just seems a little bit It just seems like there's too many witnesses to write it off completely.
Yeah, it's not like a mass hallucination. It's
No.
like, it's there. Everyone's looking. Can you see this? 'Cause, like, everyone's asking each other kind of thing. And it's one of them, like, okay, if it's 2 or 3 people, you're like, maybe not. But when it's so many, you've got so many witnesses, you have to think, well, maybe someone saw something.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be devastating, though, if it was actually just a bell statue, like a memorial statue or something that was being transported?
There'd been an explosion in the nearby town. The town hall had gone up and the bell travelled all the way over. Damn.
Devastated.
Swear it was a UFO.
What a way to ruin our dreams.
So, have you got anything else? Is there anything else you read into?
I found that the Russian government have recently discovered that the Nazis had a secret base in the Arctic that they were using to try and track the weather.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, they thought that if they could predict the weather, that they could turn the tide of the war.
Oh, God.
Which is kind of weird, because was that already a thing? Weather prediction?
I mean, yeah, it must have been, surely.
Yeah, it's not like they've made a huge, big secret base and the rest of the world's going, but they know it's not a secret, right?
No. Leave him there. No one tell him. Jeez. Yeah, surely there's a German Michael Fish or John Ketley out there, surely.
I mean, I would think so. It seems a bit ridiculous to think that they would build a whole secret base. And then to kind of be like, right, okay, so according to our weather testing equipment, it's going to be really heavy rain in London tomorrow. And the people in London are just looking out their window like, getting a bit black out there, and it's probably going to rain tomorrow. You know, like, I don't understand.
How's that going to help him, though? Like,
I don't know.
Like, well, I mean, okay, maybe for planes and stuff, but like literally, what?
It doesn't make any sense, does it? There is a theory that was what they told everybody that they were doing, but it was, you know, something else, something really secret. But then, if that was the case as well, if you were like, you know, if you said to your friend like, "Oh yeah, I'm working at a secret base," and they're like, "Oh cool, what are you working on?" "Oh, we're predicting the weather," and then you're like, "Right, but that's not a thing, predicting the weather." And then they've already bust themselves, because that just sounds so dumb. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you're not. You're not predicting the weather. What are you doing that's so secretive?
No, I
Either
know
way,
you're lying. Come
it's
on.
ridiculous.
Jeez.
And then you get these these stories of these underground bases where the Nazis were never told that the war ended and that they're still there, or, you know, like they were still there decades after the war waiting for instructions.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, just open the door and just have a look out, and you know what I mean. If there's like, pick up a paper, just go to a local shop. You don't even have to.
They open the door and there's a massive Goodyear blimp flying past with the Union Jack flag, and they're like, "That's weird." Why are they flying that?
Maybe they changed our flag design while we've been underground.
But I feel kind of bad for them that nobody made that call. Even like a last minute call, like any of their mates or whatever in different barracks, and they're like, "Oh, we've lost the war. Should we let those guys know in them, 15 bunkers?" Are they your mates? Well, I mean, we weren't close, but fuck them.
Yeah, poor Hans. He's still there.
I just feel kind of bad for them. Like, they've wasted like 30 years or something, sat around, starving, eating crap rations, and then they open their door one day and they're like, "Those absolute bastards."
I'm glad we lost. You know what? I'm glad we lost. Dicks.
Yes, I do feel bad for them.
Oh Jesus, that's funny.
Yeah. But I think a lot of these is just like, I think it's probably propaganda that the Allies made up to make the Germans look really, really dumb.
Yeah.
Some of it just seems really far-fetched. But given, Himmler and his weirdness...
To be honest, with what I've read, I truly could believe that there is probably someone underground at this minute going, have we won yet?
We surely must have won by now. It's been ages.
I mean, I lost. I just want to go home.
Yes. Yeah, I kind of feel bad. But I'm over it.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, these are the people that believed Atlantis existed.
Yeah, and that they were related. I mean, where did they even think Atlantis was?
So, right. Oh, right. So, Atlantis, right? It's not a real place, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it's from Plato's book, Timaeus and Critias, right? Which is, it's not a book about Atlantis. They don't start off by going, well, there was Aquaman and he could speak to the fish. It's not about that. It's a thought exercise, a critical thinking exercise. So Plato asks these two students to have a comeback to a speech that he did, which was basically the Athenians are the greatest social society ever. How would you come up with defeating them? So it's about the society, it's about politics, it's about everything that you think if you're going to start a political party, you'd go, I'll read that. But the Nazis' version of Atlantis isn't based off that. It's based off Ignatius Donnelly's book. Right? I love the name Ignatius for a start, so you know this is going to be good. So basically, he was a senator in America. He was an American senator, and I think he wrote it in 1880 something. But basically, it was Atlantis was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It was an advanced civilization. They had all the Old Testament stuff and all that kind of prehistory went on there. So not just the Garden of Eden, but the most of the Greek and Roman history came from there. Basically, their first colony when they decided to move off the island was Egypt. So this is kind of what he was basing this all off. So nothing to do with what Plato said, because Plato's Atlantis was based in the Mediterranean. It was based on a seafaring people who basically just were marauders, and they were defeated by the Athenians, and then the gods sunk the island because the gods turned their back on the Atlanteans. So Ignatius said, no, that isn't what happened. What actually happened was the flood that's in the Bible that sank that sank Atlantis, and the people that got away went to live in Tibet and India because it's very hilly and they'll never get flooded again.
How did they get there?
This is the thing. But
it's not next door.
Exactly. Himmler believed it so much, he sent phrenologists to Tibet to measure Tibetan people's skulls and see if they were part of the Aryan race.
Do you think the Tibetan people were just like, what are you doing? Go home.
Yeah. Basically, they rocked up in Tibet. I think it was 1937, 1938 or something. It was the Anubi, which was what Himmler set up as basically a cultural office kind of thing, but he just they went everywhere, all over the world, try to find the Holy Grail, try to find the Temple of Doom, try to find Atlantis, because he was that high on opium or whatever it was. But this was an actual place that he turned around and said, we need money for these expeditions to go to Tibet to find out if they are part of the Atlantean race, which is us. And everyone went, yeah, that sounds legit. Yeah, definitely. How much money do you need? And the thing is that pisses me off about this. I mean, right, this may come out wrong, right? I am not sticking up for Nazis or fascists or far-right people, but if you're actually going to base your ideology on something or someone, why did he pick the losers? The Atlanteans got sunk, right? Even in Plato's book, they got beat by the Athenians.
So why not pick the Athenians?
Exactly. Why not? Why go? Them ones, the ones that can't swim. We're based on them. That's who we are. Heil Hitler, yeah. It's like, what the what? Oh, do you know? Not even reading the book, right? It's like, yeah. We were this advanced, superior race, but a flood from the Bible that the God man upstairs sent down killed us. I'm so glad they lost. Oh.
I love how this is the thing that's made you angriest.
But literally, it's a book about winners and losers, and they go, losers, yeah, we'll choose that one.
They clearly weren't the smartest people in the world.
Exactly. I mean, in fairness, I don't think Ignatius was as well. He did write a second book about Ragnarok, and in it, basically, there was an advanced civilization over 12,000 years ago, and a comet hit the Earth, which made this civilization retreat into caves, and because they lived in caves, they forgot about all the art and the civilization they had before, and that's where Neanderthal man came from.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
It's just like, yeah, I've been in a cave for a bit. I've forgotten how to paint.
Right. I mean, that makes this.
It's not even seriously. The more I've got through this research, the more I've just gone, oh, really? I mean, to be honest with you, I never went to university. I never read the classics, as you may be able to tell. But even I know that is not logical.
It's like one giant face palm, isn't it? It's like, oh.
That's it. And then at the end of the war, they're all like, how did we lose?
Do you think Hitler thought it was a pretty crap idea? Like all of these, you think he just thought, oh my God, I'm surrounded by idiots. He was like Scar in The Lion King when he's got all the hyenas by him and he's like, I'm surrounded by idiots. That was Hitler. But he was like, it's gone too far now. They've dropped the leaflets. They've done the door-to-door stuff. I'm just going to have to go along with it.
I think as soon as... I think there was some ideas that he thought, oh, you know what, maybe that'll work. But I think because Himmler just did so much on his own, off his own back, he just went and did all this stuff. I think by the time Hitler found out, he was like, oh, he's built what, where?
He just went full rogue, didn't he?
Yeah. He's got 12 knights, what? I think by that time, but I think as well they would just try to look for anything to try and fit in with this Aryan thing. We are the strongest. Everyone else is weaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think they were just once they crafted everything around that narrative to try and anything and everything that was even tenuously described as Aryan, they went, that's something to do with us. We'll look into it. We'll send out surveys and try and find everything. I mean, they even right before the war started, they were going to go to Bolivia, I think, and try and find if the I almost said Pikachu, but that isn't the place. The Aztec places and all them. That's the one. Machu Picchu was somehow tenuously related to Aryan culture and maybe Atlantis. I think as soon as it was, they had something that maybe proved that narrative. They held on, and God, they did not let go.
It's like they stole legendary culture from here, there, and everywhere across the world. Really, I mean, like Arthur and Camelot was our thing, you know, and the Atlanteans and the Athenians belonged to the Mediterranean. It's just like they were like, we don't have anybody cool. Let's just steal everybody else's.
Exactly, that's it. It was they just didn't. They didn't have anything or anyone to hold on to, so they kind of needed something. I mean, they did have. Excuse me. They did have the Spear of Destiny, which was the spear that allegedly pierced Christ's side. So this was called the Spear of Longinus. So it was on display in Vienna, which was the Hallberg Spear. There's actually 3 of these around the world, and no one can decide whether it is or not. But so this spear was in Vienna, and Hitler had apparently seen this when he was still in his Vienna days, and he was still trying to be a painter. And he was, I'd say, normal, but I don't think he ever was. So he had a vision when he went to see this spear in the museum, and he kind of described it as the vision of the Anschluss when he rode into Austria and assimilated Austria back into the German Empire. And he kind of said it was like that. It was me having power. But this spear, apparently, Charlemagne had it, so he was like the First Reich, the Holy Roman Empire. Frederick Barbarossa had it, which was the second big. He was one of the big German people. So this kind of stuck with him, and because it was these people had it. Like Charlemagne claimed it was he had the spear in battle, and it was because he won 47 battles. He kind of said it's because it was due to the spear, but then he dropped the spear, his horse reared up, and he fell off and died.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, apparently. So the person that holds onto this spear controls the destiny of the world, but as soon as it's relinquished, the person dies thereafter. So apparently Charlemagne dropped the spear, and as soon as it hit the ground, the horse reared up and he fell off and cracked his head and died. Barbarossa had the spear in his campaigns, and apparently he drowned when he was crossing a river and he didn't have the spear on his person, or he just went for a swim in a swollen river, and it washed him away. Apparently. Yeah, but 45 emperors had the spear, so it's not really that good if it's had that many owners,
No.
To be honest with you. But it was something Hitler actually, I don't know whether he truly believed in it, but when he rode into Austria in 1938, he took the spear and all the other Habsburg's riches back to Nuremberg, and apparently he had the spear inside his bunker when he committed suicide. It was found in that bunker. So he was a little bit horny for it, and he truly believed that it was. But maybe if he would have been holding on to it, and when he shot himself, he may have missed. Could have just proved it that way, couldn't he, really? But
you think more it was the symbology of it as well. Like, even if it wasn't this magical artifact that was, the holiest of holies. It just symbolised that he had some sort of power.
Yeah. I think that's all it was from. I genuinely, he wasn't as enamoured with the occult as Himmler and Hess were. I mean, I think he was. Goebbels didn't really buy into it either. He just used it if he could. To get his own way, and I think Hitler did as well. But Himmler and Hess, I think them two were the Stars controllers, and this is how it is, and they truly believed it. But they were.
Have you seen pictures of Himmler when he was a kid, though? He clearly got shoved in the locker every single day of high school. He had his head flushed down the toilet so many times, it's no wonder he ended up whacked.
To be honest with you, he doesn't look that good as an adult.
No.
There's a picture of him stood next to Hitler and Goebbels, and it's like, spot the odd one out. Them two. It's not great, but he does look like a. If you saw him, you'd report, you wouldn't want him hanging outside school. That's all I'm going to say on that. You'd be like, right,
He's got this little weaselly face, doesn't he?
It's just something about it that he's got no chin either. It's just all. Ugh.
He looks like your stereotypical right-hand henchman out of a film.
Yeah, like stood behind the bully kind of thing, going, "Ooh, I'll get you."
Yeah.
And literally stood behind the bully. Yeah. He's a
bit of a dick.
Yeah, well, yeah, they all were, weren't they?
Yes.
But yeah, they were. I mean, like we said before, I think this is only just scratching the surface of it. But there's again, it was. I think it was not easy to do, but with the mindset of the German people and the way everything was, I think with just trying to push I don't understand how they had the balls to say we're the best people in the position that they were in, but the whole kind of Aryan thing, and then anything to prove that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, just. Well, I was going to say they're all gone now, but they're not, are they?
No. We've got modern day nastier versions.
Yeah. I mean, they just believe QAnon now, don't they, rather than the occult. Same thing, innit? They swap one for the other, to be honest. But
yeah.
But anyway, horrible scumbags. And I will go on record of saying that.
Did you find out anything else?
Let's see. So, there is a little bit. I mean, werewolves in the Reich. I know it's something that's in the book that they do say about, and I was so intrigued when he mentioned it. But basically, it's not real werewolves, unfortunately. It's just guerrilla fighters and the resistance. So basically, when the Allies were advancing and Germany were falling back, Goebbels went on the radio. I don't think he went on the radio, but he pushed the propaganda aspect of being a werewolf, being a fighter, being a terror to all the Allies. And he did this over the radio broadcasts. He put out pamphlets. And it did, I wouldn't say it worked, but there was still actual werewolf killings going on up into 1947. So 2 years after the war ended, it kind of got into the German psyche. Newspapers ran the headlines of fury of Nazi werewolves to be unleashed on invaders, and there were actually people on the radio who were saying, "They're werewolves. I bite people. I rip people apart with my hands," and they were pushing it really hard. But General Patton, he denied the existence. He said, "No, it's nothing. We're not scared of them." But American intelligence, which is an oxymoron, but American intelligence agencies actually did say that there were such things as these guerrilla resistance fighters, and they were named the werewolves, and it stuck in them kind of circles because the Bush administration during the Iraqi war, so the first Bush, actually called Iraqi insurgents werewolves. He went on the record and described them as werewolves. Bush, the older Bush, fought in World War II. He was a pilot in Japan. So maybe he heard that, and he was head of the CIA as well. So he was privy to that information. So whether it just stuck with him or whether he was purposely used, but it did have an actual effect on him.
I know in the German folklore, and the Grimm brothers really pushed the fairy stories. They collected the fairy stories from around the world, and they twisted them so that they weren't all happy endings, and there was a lot of bloodshed, and it was very Aryanistic kind of thing. But they did pick up a story about werewolves, and according to your average villager, there were such things as werewolves, but werewolves were actually protectors of the village. So they weren't just killing people mercilessly in the villages, they were actually kind of like guardians of the village. Yeah, they were guerrilla soldiers for the village. They protected the people.
Yeah, I heard that as well. Like they were in the early folklorish times. They were guardians, protectors of the forest, of the locality. They weren't what we see nowadays as ripping people apart. But that kind of fits in with the whole German thinking of, with it being a kind of civilian militia as well.
Yeah, they definitely went with the more fantastical side of how are we going to promote this race of people that we want to be to the people. We'll use all of this kind of folklore stuff and all these legends and all this kind of whimsical, mystical, magical stuff. We'll sell it to the common folk, and it worked.
Indeed, it worked really well. I mean, to be honest with you, I'd say I don't know how it would work today, but I think it probably would work about the same. I don't think they get as many people following it, but they manipulated a lot of things to make them to come out on top, really.
Well, yeah, look at the flat earthers. People will still believe stuff nowadays.
Yeah, it's just I used to work with a lad who was a flat earther, and he was like the argument is, right, I'm gonna climb, like when you're up a mountain you can't see the curvature of the earth, and then you go, have you been up a mountain? And they go, no, but, and it's like, well, unless you've seen it, why are you telling me this? There's science documented how the earth is round, right? We've known this since 1492 or whatever, right? That's documented, and now you want me to believe, because you heard this off a bloke in the pub and you've never actually seen it or witnessed it, you want me to believe it from your mouth. Not happening.
Mm-hmm. But there are so many people that do.
I know. But in fairness, this lad was like, oh, well, I left school at 15. Didn't need school.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you did need school, though, didn't you, really? Because you think the earth is flat. Bless him. But anyway, I digress. And yeah.
But it just goes to show how easy it is for people to believe in something fantastical, you know.
Of course, to be manipulated into it, and as well with a lot of this stuff, it's herd mentality as well. I mean, especially in any kind of circles, if you get enough people believing it, then maybe there's a reason why they all believe in it, so then people who start to believe it don't need to look into it as much, so they don't need to do the research. It's because, well, I heard off John, and he heard off Bill, and he heard off... You know what I mean? So all these people believe it, but...
It's kind of like ghosts and UFOs. You know, like people are like, oh, do you believe in ghosts? Yeah. Do you believe in UFOs? Yeah. And nobody really says anymore, you're nuts. Everyone's just like, all right, okay, whatever. It's just because so many people believe it, and in theory, they both do sound ridiculous, but it's a herd mentality, like you say.
It is, that's the thing. But in that kind of aspect, you can get yourself believing in it, if you know what I mean. If you're in a dark room in an abandoned warehouse, do you know what I mean? Your eyes will start playing tricks on you, and the shadows, and then you'll start to believe, and you can talk yourself into kind of believing things. And especially if you're with someone who believes in that, and you have that kind of experience.
Yeah.
Do you know it's like that. I wouldn't say, it is herd mentality and just going along with the crowd and anything for an easy life kind of thing.
Yeah. Just went a bit too far in Germany.
just a tad. I mean, Jesus Christ. all over, like, and these are the main guys that were in charge who had these fantastical ideas. These were the main people. And I mean, Neville Chamberlain met with Hitler, and I'm sure he must have met Himmler at some point, and he walked away and went, "No, they're all right, them lads." You know what I mean? I mean, you get a reading off someone, don't you, when you meet them, and you're like, right, yeah, they're either all right or they're not.
Yeah.
And it's not like they weren't politicians and they didn't move in. Before the war started, I'm sure they went to conferences and stuff. And
yeah, it's not like they were just your average Joe that just put on a suit, grow a tash, and came into power and had all these great ideas. Yeah, they had some sort of education beforehand.
They had a background in it. I mean, they were doing it for... 1924 he was in prison, so there was nearly 20 years before, 10 years before more than 10 years before the war started, that other people would have met him.
Yeah.
And gone, oh, okay. And you're the leader of this country? Okay. Jesus.
Yes. Agreed.
I never knew this stuff. I didn't know people believed in this stuff. I didn't realise it was the basis of a world war. It's what the people in charge of, well, the Axis, them, the bad people, this is what they actually believed in.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, they were allowed to, I'm not saying allowed to believe in it, but allowed to get away with this.
Yeah.
Of being this simple.
Yeah.
And they're held up as these brilliant geniuses by some people, and you just read into it and go, no, they're not. They're not.
They were little boys with some weird ideas that their, figuratively speaking, mother just went, yeah, crack on.
Yeah, a lot of Napoleon syndrome going on. Little men with big ideas, and unfortunately, they all met at the same time, and they all were going in the same direction.
Yeah.
Because if only one of these people wouldn't have been involved, then it could have been a completely different story.
Yeah. They just egged each other on, really, didn't they? They just made it so much worse.
Played off each other's egos and dangerous. Mm-hmm. Anyway, right, brilliant. Okay, so for now, that was the MMO podcast with me, Confirmation Sam, And
True 300.
y'all have a wonderful evening, day, week, whatever you want, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.